How's it going? bigSHow, theGod here again. So I've just had a busy day, and as my previous podcast, we're doing skepticism, and then prior to that, it was doing goal settings and stuff for the next 3 years. I've been working on a bit of that today. So my topic is humour. And I have a certain type of humour that I'm self-aware of. And so I thought I'd share that as, in my opinion, something that benefits me. And it seems to be how my brain works as well with some of the other things I talk about, like being skeptical, questioning everything, analyzing it, thinking that doesn't make sense. When you try and make sense of things, when it doesn't make sense, I start to laugh. And then that tends to encourage me to keep doing it. And then I find myself laughing at others and everybody and everything and myself, but mostly others. And so I thought I'd share that and see how that comes across. And maybe give a few examples of what I mean by my type of humor and how I seem to be able to laugh at those types of things with other people. And I just carry on, and it's just something I enjoy doing, I think. So let's do the first piece, and back to our notes. I put humour. So humour, I do laughing at myself, laughing at others. So that's generally what I do. And then there's the laughing at myself with others, or laughing at others with myself, and then laughing at others with others. So whether there's one more person here, I will mock them, I will mock myself with them, or I will mock other people with them. Or if there's more than one person, if there's two people here, I'll mock one of them while the other one is here, or I'll mock the other one while the other one is here, or I'll mock myself while both of them are here. So you see what I mean? Or we will mock people while we're here that are not here. The gossiping, I guess. So that's the other piece. And I'll go round and round in circles all the time. Any story we're telling, and no one is off limits. Nobody I can think of. I guess that humanizes everybody that's around me. I'm talking aunties, I'm talking people that you generally wouldn't mock in the same room. That's the piece of humor I'm more into. It's one thing to mock people when they're not in the room. I'll do that. But I'm more interested in mocking them when they're in the room, because that's a little bit more dangerous and it seems to have a little bit more impact. So, as you can tell, my humor is generally to mock other people. Is that true? Pretty much is. It's just to laugh at others and at their expense. Is that a problem? Why do I do that? Is it to make myself feel better about myself? No, because I do it to myself as well. If I left myself out, then that would maybe be true, but I don't. I don't leave myself out. No way. I just don't enjoy it as much. It's just not as funny. So no. So anyway, the benefits of the humor. So I find it obviously releases something with the laughing. And I think with the skeptical point of view from it, and from laughing at someone while they're there and mocking them and having humor while they're there, encourages a different level of relationship with them. What I mean by that is that I can almost get on a different subject, or see them in a different light, or see them in a different way when we do something that's not quite how what they're used to. You know what I mean? There's definitely something to be said when you joke about somebody to their face, especially when there's a hint of sarcasm in there as well. So I left that out, didn't I? So I've got sarcastic. Here we go. I have got it here. My humor is quite sarcastic in a lot of ways. Which in a group encourages someone else to do that to somebody else as well. And all of a sudden the atmosphere and the almost entertainment really involves everybody. It starts to involve everyone, because generally when you're being someone makes sarcastic comments and involves you in it, you kind of comment back. You know, you swing back, don't you? And that's something that we might not have seen. And we get surprised, or we learn something when that happens. So you're invoking a reaction, and that can be interesting in itself, and a lot more human-based than just complimenting each other every day, or asking them how the weather was, where they were, or what they were doing yesterday. How was the lunch? How was the food? Really? Really? But when you mock someone in a group that's not used to being mocked, that can take you onto just another level of kind of vulnerability, emotion-driven kind of conversations out of nothing. And whether there was something there or not, it didn't matter. And then when it gets more interesting, is that depending on what the subject matter is, or what your involvement has been with that person, you can take it to another level without even trying. And I guess that's a skill. It's a skill I have. And I seem to admit I sort of pick and choose how much I use it these days. Not sure why. Maybe it becomes a bit dull. But anyway, so the sarcasm, the humor, the laughing at others, because you got to keep the dialogue going good enough, right? It's really difficult if you don't have some dialogue, something fresh. I guess that's what I'm meaning by I get a bit stale on it, because I'm not big on doing the same subject matter all the time. The same joke, the same, he's, whatever we're mocking the person for, I kind of only want to mock them for a while on it. With some people, that's their go-to. And it can be years later using the same joke. Kind of. I really laugh at the same thing over and over again. Sometimes my laughing at something is just more the reaction to it, to what the subject is. You might see a sensitivity. Pricking someone's sensitivity can be quite fun. So that's in my opinion another skill. And I thought it showed another side of my way of thinking. So I'm skeptical. So like another layer that comes out of pulling a few things together and then pushing them against each other. A bit like debating. When you debate with people regularly, it sharpens you up. So I find having sarcastic humor within a group setting can keep you sharp as well. Can have the same effect. But what I do know is it can get a bit conditioned, because getting fresh material is requires knowing more about them. And then that normally only comes to hand if the person's willing to give it. So you got to have some level of tapping into their humor, tapping into their day a little bit more, having a little bit of knowledge of something, and then joking to them about it. And whether they're happy to joke about it or not, people might tend to not share that anymore, because then they were offended by you joking about it. So I've got a few things that I do with my humour. I've got my Facebook page. I kind of put jokes and stuff on there regularly, just to share thoughts that come to my mind in a humorous way. I have a comic book series I've been doing for a couple of years now. I throw it out there into the digital nothingness and see what happens. I enjoyed that for some time. I use live friends, family, my kids, my friends, as I said, extended friends, and we create a character out of each of them. So I found that that opened me up more, probably without realizing it, got me to start creating some type of structure, getting things off my mind, putting it down on paper. So going through that, same thing as me journaling and doing notes now. I think that set me up for that, gave me a platform for it. And as the years went on, the material, I started trying to tip into some other bit of, take it on another tangent, but generally end up back in my same sort of wheelhouse humour. And then, interesting enough, I find it even now sort of just getting a bit repetitive. And only to me, the audience may still like the same jokes or something, but I now seem to add more stuff I've learned. I seem to push into there and laugh about or make light of, but it's still generally mocking each other on that subject matter. So yeah, I'll do a comic strip maybe once a month. Whereas in the beginning there, I was doing hundreds of pages of them. I thought it was hilarious. It didn't matter what anyone else thought, maybe 50 people would tell me how funny it was. And I could throw it out there anytime I wanted. Then friends would start telling me to add a particular person who was one of our mates. And I'd sort of think it over and maybe add him, maybe not. Some characters would come and some characters would go. That was the beauty of it. I can create a character this afternoon if I wanted to, by just grabbing a character and making it, calling it a name. So it sort of just sits there now as a platform I can regenerate anytime I want. But like Star Wars, I suppose, or any of these Marvel movies, I can just retell the same story 5 years from now. We'll suck it up. So yeah, but I do think a humour is a big piece of I think it's a piece, having that self-awareness, knowing you have it. Maybe it's some of it may actually subdue some of the truths, might actually, you're not making light of everything. So from the outside, it can look like you're not serious about anything. But people that know me know I'm pretty serious most of the time anyway. Yet I mock them whenever I want to. So which one is it? How do you have balance if you don't have humor in there at all? You can't just do humor only. I would have thought you'd have to have some type of seriousness then to have some humor. But if you had no humor, you can only be serious. Well, that's pretty boring. And don't get me wrong, I'm boring most of the time because you can't be humorous all the time because that would be odd. I don't just laugh every time someone walks in the room. But when you have the ability to make something funny or enjoy some moments together with laughter and uncontrollable laughter to an event or to someone else's demise or someone else's stupidity or thing they've said or done, it's a great release. So no, I definitely think of all the things, it's probably helped me work through myself the best is with the humor. And remember, it's probably out of balance once where the humor was kind of everything. So, but with structure, with reviewing, with analyzing, and with skeptical thinking and all the other pieces all joined together, and then you have humor in there, man, it's makes every day really quite enjoyable as a package. By breakdown, I don't have on my schedule here to laugh this afternoon, but I do. There's something I'm laughing at some point in the time in the day with somebody. Today, me and the wife were laughing about a few things. Yesterday, me and one of my workmates were laughing all day must have been for an hour about some event we went through, which was quite a tough event we went through, and then we were able to candidly laugh and joke about a lot of angles of it, and we were serious in there as well, which is brilliant. I think it's part of it. I think if we don't have that, I'm not sure what's the point. I think you're missing something. I do get when you're only laughing at something, though. I do like to have both. Definitely have to have both. So there is a balance. But it definitely helps me a lot every day to get through whatever I'm getting through. Can you learn it? Not sure, I know a lot of the people I'm around, they might feed off my humor, but it can be quite creative. So some people can't really create that humor. You kind of it or you're not, from what I've seen. Doesn't mean you don't have your part to play in it. But when you're an instigator, and when they know you're okay with whatever's said in a sarcastic way or triggers you off, to now know, or let's laugh about this serious moment or the serious subject we'll be talking about, because you can spin off while you're talking about it in depth, take on board what they've said about the event and be serious, then go and laugh about it as well. I find quite refreshing and quite proactive, because it's another way of sort of stepping back, going in to any pressure moment that you're in. So maybe I should use it a bit more, actually. The more I'm saying it out loud here, especially I'm deciding it's a skill. Let's do that. It's a skill. If I use a recent event, if I use some self-awareness, recent event, self-awareness, and let's say the meeting or the subject's I've picked up that the conversation has gotten too serious. Is that a fair word? Too serious or too... No one's breathing. What does that mean? Too serious, too focused, or too guarded. You're actually too guarded when you're like that, because you might not want to say the right or wrong thing, right? So if that's a statement, if that's happening to you in real time, then humour would have been worthwhile in that moment. Correct? If we're all on guard, well, I can speak for myself. If I'm on guard in a meeting with 3 or 4 people, because we're debriefing something that's that was an issue, it was a problem, it's cost us money, we want to resolve this, we're problem solving. Having the intelligence, the emotional intelligence, here we go, the emotional intelligence at certain times, points, or times, or moments, to add humour or fun. I like that thought, because that's something it's a skill I have. I always feel like it's still inappropriate to bring in. And we don't want to be that guy, do we? Because we feel you've lost our subject, right? But there's a debate there that could do the opposite. I'm actually going to ponder on that. So this is what I do, right? So even when I'm doing a cast, I like to listen to myself, or listen to what I've said, or listen to what others have said. I'll note it down and take myself off on a bit of a tangent. And what this is doing is giving me an opportunity to be in a moment later and to practice it. So it's conscious practice versus subconscious practice. That's what I call it anyway. Because I think if I'm consciously practicing something is different to just doing stuff. And in the doing stuff, you might just reflect and say, oh, I was doing it there. But only if you're consciously aware that you're doing it. It's not the same if you just reflect on something and say, yeah, see, that was a sign of me doing something. That was a sign of me doing something. Sure, that was enlightening you to something. It's very different, in my opinion, to consciously knowing that you're doing something. Or maybe it's just that you're consciously framing it into some words, which is still part of it. So you might consciously know you're doing something, but you haven't been able to explain what that is. So it's the same thing. So being able to write something down is a way of being able to share it, and a way of being able to share it to yourself, but in words. So now it's still possibly conscious, but at least you have a name for it, something you were doing. So one of two things happens there. You either subconsciously never knew and now you've named it, or you consciously knew about it but you hadn't named it, or hadn't noticed or realized. If you realize you're doing it, then that's conscious, correct? You may not realize that what you had done was doing more. That's just more feedback and a deeper awareness of the same thing you were consciously doing. If you were consciously doing it. If you didn't realize you were doing it, but you knew, if you didn't realize you were doing it, if you didn't realize you were doing it all, then that's ignorance, I guess. Ignorance and lack of awareness. Is that what that is? Yeah. But if you're subconsciously, if you're unconsciously doing it, then it's very important to be self-aware of it. And then very important to look at it and see if there's negatives or positives to it. I think that's what the growth pattern is. And some of that comes from feedback we might not be listening to, feedback we don't want to hear, or feedback that we think we already hear, but we don't really understand the extent. So we've dismissed the feedback because we haven't followed it. Yeah, I get it. I'm this or that. Done nothing about it because did I not understand the full extent of what I was saying or doing? Or I'm conscious of it, I'm aware of it, I disagree with your feedback or your opinion on that, so I'm going to continue doing this, which is both valid in my opinion. I get plenty of feedback on certain things that I should or shouldn't do. That's the risk versus reward system. I get that. But that's the risk you take, and that's just part of it. Which is part of why you have to be able to have a level of communication or level of awareness and self-awareness to be able to do it, actually. Even if you're not, because it's tricky when you're not super knowledgeable on the subject matter or highly intelligent on on retaining information, and so you can be triggered to look stupid all the time. So guess you got to pick your moments, keep practicing on what works and doesn't work. Humor is definitely something to be careful with, in my experience. Definitely something to tread carefully, especially with my sarcasm, because otherwise it can get out of hand fast, very fast, and not find you having to explain yourself for something you didn't think you said, and that's that risk versus reward. It wasn't worth it half the time, so it has to be very selective, in my opinion, or more selective than I have in the past. Depends on the audience. Some audiences, whereas I can generally tell when a certain person's not picked up on my humor, so I'm better off just cutting it out, or wait until they kind of start getting used to it. Used to get a lot with when I'd go overseas and use my humor with other people overseas, and they'd be all offended. They'd be all offended something I said. And interestingly, over some time, they would find it hilarious. It's because it would be so much truth to what I'm kind of saying in a certain sense. What's an example? An example would be maybe male chauvinism, because the wife would normally be with me, and I'd be playing up the chauvinistic male kind of stereotype things that you kind of, most cultures that I'm around anyway, especially Western cultures, kind of tabooed, since women have been allowed to vote, those sorts of things. You bring in something of that sort of chauvinism, and half the room find it funny and half the room don't. And that's what I quite enjoy that. But even that gets a bit old after a while, but a new audience find it grows in life. The friends that are with me generally are well in tune with it, but people that are outside the circle are not impressed unless they have the same humor. If they have the same humor, then they join in, So that's quite cool. So yeah, so that's the role, humor.